September 21st, 2012. From the stylish high-tech underground studios of Ribbit Media in Warwick, Rhode Island, this is NewsUndies. For September 21st, 2012, this is NewsUndies, all the news that shouldn't be news. I'm Paul Torville with these headlines. Neil Armstrong is dead. Cycling will never be the same. Wrongity wrong wrong. The public school district of Grand Island, Nebraska has ruled that a deaf boy's name in sign language looks too much like a gun. But the common nickname for Richard is perfectly fine. I wonder if they had a little Nordic kid named Gunter, they'd be as worked up about it. U.S. diplomatic stations in Cairo and Benghazi attacked over amateur film which offends Islam. Pilot dies in airshow crash. It must be a day ending in Y. Also from the I didn't see that coming department, Daniel Fernandez, 16, of Sayreville, New York, had his head knocked off. Literally. After sticking his head through an emergency hatch in the roof of a double-decker bus on the way to a Sweet 16 party. Witnesses reported Fernandez's mood, and really the whole mood of the party, never recovered. Islam, the religion of peace, erupts in peaceful disagreement with an amateur filmmaker living in the U.S., leaving ambassador to Libya and 4 other Americans dead. How much arsenic is in your healthy brown rice? The FDA considers setting limits for arsenic in food. CNN reports airlines reducing legroom to increase profits. In other news, the sun is expected to come up tomorrow, which it has never done before. Monster truck veers into stands. It must be a day ending in Y. Yemen, Egypt, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya peacefully burned to the ground as peacefully offended Muslims peacefully disagree with the premise of a crummy little amateur film trailer. Peacefully. A group in Thailand reports Apple co-founder Steve Jobs has been reincarnated as a great warrior/philosopher. Things are different in Thailand, apparently. Chick-fil-A comes out as a little less anti-gay. Come on, with a name like that, that stops just short of being Rusty Trombone's cock shop. Because it's a chicken restaurant. Don't go away, coming up after the break, Tanning LaFrance, A Heavenly Show, and Mrs. Christ?
Your childhood. George Lucas. In 1977, George Lucas made your childhood. In 1997, George Lucas took your childhood away. In 1999, George Lucas made you watch as he bent your childhood over a stump. Now, George Lucas wants you to watch him violating your childhood in 3D. Finally, someone is here to stop George Lucas from defiling your childhood memories anymore. But we need your help. The original trilogy Restoration Alliance has been established to raise all the money necessary to distract George Lucas from thinking Star Wars needs to be revised again. Please, give generously. This is our most desperate hour. Help us save your memories. You're our only hope.
Kate's Cans. All right. As you may recall, in the last episode of NewsUndies, we reported on the nude photos of Prince Harry from a romp in Las Vegas, and how much the news media made too much of a big thing out of this non-event. Well, now, a French magazine has published photos of Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, you may remember her as the former Lady Kate Middleton, while she sunbathed topless at a ritzy chateau in France. Funnily enough, the British royalty made roughly zero stink about Harry's Harry getting airtime. Kate's photos, on the other hand, caused a furor on the order of the U.S. response to Pearl Harbor. As the former U.S. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara said, quote, "Proportionality should be a guideline for war." End quote. So, what's the difference? Well, for starters, Harry is a guy and Kate isn't. Second, Kate is now a member of the British royal family. Had this happened a few years ago, or to another woman not married to the Queen's grandson, I doubt the Queen would have a word to say about the matter. Third, it takes a certain kind of nerve to live that high on the government teat, and then expect to have any privacy at all. To then go so far as to sue a magazine in another country on the people's dime to stop the publishing of the photographs? The Queen got some stones. In an era when fiscal responsibility is the buzzword that won't stop buzzing, the Republican National Committee held its completely unnecessary convention in Tampa, Florida. How much did the convention cost? It's hard to say for sure, but the federal government pitched in $68 million in taxpayer money to publicize this foregone conclusion. And to be fair, another 68 to the Democrats for the same thing. With all the pomp and glitz, it seemed the RNC had redefined itself as the Republican National Confection. Then some fool had to open their mouth. Somewhere along the way, Michelle Bachmann called on Americans to vote for Romney because Obama is an extremely wealthy elitist. What? Romney disagreed with the party's official platform on abortion. The Daily Show's Samantha Bee did a masterful job exposing delegates' hypocrisy in the topic of liberty and choice versus the anti-abortion plank of the party's platform in the context of Romney's choosing to reject the party's platform abortion plank thing. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, see the August 29th episode of The Daily Show. It is brilliant. 2 words. Clint Eastwood. Once a little distance got between Eastwood and the convention, he remarked, "Well, they were stupid enough to invite me." Then, in a surprise result, Mitt Romney accepted the RNC's presidential nomination. I did not see that coming 6 months ago. ScienceDebate.org published the responses of President Obama and Governor Romney to a series of questions related to things like education, research, climate change, science, and public policy, and so on. Romney revealed himself to be a long-winded, unfocused, old-money business school graduate. Obama was, for the most part, much more concise, focused, and self-consistent. Then, as if at the request of the left, the length, width, and depth of Romney's out-of-touchness was revealed, right from his own mouth, in the form of hidden camera recordings of Romney at a May fundraiser. Romney casually characterized 47% of the country's population as non-income tax-paying moochers dependent on government entitlements and with a highly developed victim mentality. It's not even October. I can't wait to see if Mitt Romney has what it takes to implode all the way down to a black hole. A small scrap of papyrus has recently been found which reports Jesus as having talked about his wife. Yep, his wife. Does this matter? Here are Pig and Sheep with their thoughts.
This proves Christians invented marriage. There's no way this reduces my faith in the inerrancy of the Bible. I just don't see how this matters, except as a fragmentary bit of support for the existence of an itinerant rabbi who turns out to have possibly taken a wife.
Well, that's what Pig and Sheep think. What are your thoughts? Email them to ovcomments@newsundies.com. And now, a NewsUndies Science and Technology update. A new quantum computer at UC Berkeley has managed to determine that the prime factors of 15 are 5 and 3. 12 times out of 25. So, not entirely on the money, since prime numbers don't change all that often. Progress, of a kind, I guess. Virgin Galactic's Spaceship Two has completed its final unpowered test flight, and is scheduled for its first powered test flight by the end of the year. It seems like only yesterday that Spaceship One flew its third X-Prize winning flight. It was actually October 2003, but it feels like yesterday. Johnny Cab's coming to California. One day. Maybe. California prepares to license autonomous driverless cars. Of course, if self-driving cars take over, what will Ponch and John have to do? Google has been granted a patent for software to identify real-world objects in full-motion video. At least it's not a knife and fork patent. With any luck, if you have every square inch of your house covered by publicly viewable webcams, maybe Google can actually help you find your keys. Don't go away, coming up after the break, TMI, losing the plot, and does not a PhD a scientist make?
For your upcoming wedding, bat mitzvah, or funeral, trust the professionals at Blah's Florist to create the perfect mood-appropriate arrangement. Your special occasion will be so much more special with a Blah's Florist arrangement. Blah's will help your memories be that much more memorable. Call or click today to order your unique and not at all sexually suggestive arrangement from Blah's Florist. Blah's, the florist you shouldn't fear.
Justin Bieber's mom. And now here's Ryan Hanley with another Jeff Goldblum fact.
You know Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum was in the movie Annie Hall. He plays a party guest on a phone and is heard saying, "I forgot my mantra." One time Jeff Goldblum really did forget his mantra, but thankfully the Smithsonian Lost and Found Department got a hold of it and returned it, although they were tempted to display it next to Fonzie's jacket. Back to you.
Thanks, Ryan. Fascinating. And now, here's Moose Weintraub with the Sports Half Minute.
Moose Weintraub Sports Half Minute. It's a whole half minute of sports. 30 seconds of sports. Moose Weintraub Sports Half Minute.
This is your Sports Half Minute. I'm Moose Weintraub. Tim Tebow hasn't ruled out a move into politics. Hooray! I wonder which party he'll try out for.
Moose Weintraub Sports Half Minute.
Thanks, Moose. Always a great report from Moose. Televangelist Pat Robertson hasn't been taken seriously by a rational person who doesn't get a paycheck from him, at least since he ran for president. Still, there are plenty of irrational people out there willing to watch and listen and send him money. It's this group, well, that worry me, frankly. Recently, a viewer asked in an email how he can stop his wife from disrespecting him. Pat Robertson, with only a passing awareness that some people actually think women are human beings, wandered right into become a Muslim and beat your wife country. Robertson didn't mug for the camera or follow with, just kidding. He was out of ideas. His co-host and apparent handler, Terry Newson, tried desperately to reel Robertson in and suggest counseling, but Robertson, like a leashed dog straining to smell a fascinating loaf of poo just out of reach, kept stretching for the wife-beating option, in part because, according to him, divorce is not permitted in Scripture. Then he wandered into a Freudian electrocomplex projection-themed free-form jazz psychobabble riff, saying that the wife's lack of respect for her husband stems from, wait for it, daddy issues. Finally, before leaving the topic, Robertson leaned in and reiterated his become a Muslim advice. I'm beginning to wonder if Pat Robertson is just a senile old preacher or a brilliant Poe with enormous patience. Occam's razor suggests the former. And finally, and I do mean finally, we all saw this coming, didn't we? Not long ago, Bill Nye the Science Guy did a video for The Big Think in which he stated that teaching creationism to children is inappropriate. Without much delay, Ken Ham of Answers in Genesis produced a response video which mimicked the look of the Bill Nye Big Think video. Ken Ham calls Nye Bill Nye the Humanist Guy, as if that's a knockdown slam, and claims that Nye doesn't understand science. He then calls out two of his staff scientists as real credible scientists because they have PhDs, suggesting that because Nye is merely an engineer by training, he doesn't really get what the scientific method is about. What Ken Ham fails to mention is that just because someone has been awarded a PhD, that doesn't mean they conduct scientific investigations with honesty and without bias. Ham tries to imply that without a PhD in biology, Nye is unqualified to speak on the importance of imparting a scientifically rooted methodological foundation to children. He tries, and fails. Ken Ham, without actually saying it, dances around the idea that scientists are just storytellers, no different from the Bronze Age mouth breathers who wrote the Old Testament, and unless these storytellers keep their place, e.g., making a better iPhone, there will be trouble. The companion videos from the staff PhDs were content-free, as expected. Then, just when it seemed everything had blown over and the zeitgeist's attention had shifted to a funny cat video, Ken Ham released a response to the responses he got to the response he made to Bill Nye's video about teaching creationism to children being inappropriate. In it, Ham referred to the rude and obscene responses they got from the secularists, and that's why they don't allow comments on their videos. Listen, Ken, come here a second. You listening? You're wrong! And you persist in being wrong despite the lack of evidence supporting your position, and the mountains and mountains, planets, solar systems, galaxies, a whole universe of mutually consistent evidence supporting the secularists' position. You persist. You clearly will not be persuaded out of your position by evidence because you were not persuaded into it by evidence. I'm sorry. Ken, you still with me? Think about this for a second. You know how the secularists talk about just changing out the Bible for another book like Harry Potter or something, and then evaluate the equivalent of Christianity based on the other book from the outside? Well, there's another little substitution experiment I'd like you to try. There's an old adage, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Change out the duck for an idiot. Bill Nye's whole point was that if an adult chooses to believe what you believe, that's the adult's choice, and that's fine. Well, okay, there are some problems with it, but that's another issue. If you handicap the mind of a child by drilling into them that magical thinking and wishing hard actually work, you not only cripple them, you cripple the nation and the progress of humanity as a whole. You're not just wrong, you're steadfastly, willfully, loudly wrong. Well, that's all for this edition of NewsUndies. If you see news that shouldn't be news, you can submit your story tips online at newsundies.com. NewsUndies is a bi-weekly show. We'll be back on October 5th with fresh undies. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Paul Torville. After that, I might be responding to the response Ken Ham makes to the response to his video responding to the secularist response to his video responding to Bill Nye. Oh, did you see Mitt Romney on Univision? For crying out loud, the guy looked like he was made out of Play-Doh. Who did his makeup? Holy cow.